From Fortress Fund Managers, this is Do It for Grantley, a podcast where we speak with women and men in Barbados about their Grantleys and other money matters. I'm Kim Howard, Marketing Manager at Fortress, and my co-host is Omar Kennedy.
Hello, listeners.
An entrepreneur, author, and former financial manager. In today's episode, Living Debt-Free, we're joined by Alison Brome. Alison is a mother and trained HR professional, but today she will be speaking with us about her quest as a single income householder to be mortgage and debt-free. Alison is part of a growing community of people sharing their financial journey on Instagram, where she keeps herself accountable as at MummyIsDebtFree. We truly appreciate you taking the time to listen to us. So let's get to it.
Financial security doesn't grow on trees. It's built brick by brick with smart investments and a strong partner. To retirement, education, and whatever your future may hold, we say bring it on. At Fortress Fund Managers, we're not afraid of the hard work, long hours, or steady saving, just like you aren't. We know better than anyone that you can't just hope for good luck. Call Fortress Fund Managers on 435-7777 to build your personal fortress.
Your future, our business. Fortress.
Hi, I'm Kim Howard from Fortress Fund Managers. Fortress Fund Managers is a mutual fund company based in Barbados. We've been operating since 1996, and we provide mutual funds in both Barbados and US dollars to individual investors as well as organizations. Omar is going to explain a little bit about what mutual funds are.
Greetings, everyone. A mutual fund is an investment product which pulls together money from you, the investors, into one big pot. And what happens from there, Fortress will take your money, along with everyone else's money, and invest it all over the world for you. So what happens is you end up investing in hundreds of different companies, dozens, hundreds of different countries around the world. And through this, you get to diversify your investment. So if you're investing by yourself, you may be able to invest in 1, 2, 3, maybe 5 or 10 companies. But through Fortress, there is no end to what you can invest in. This allows you to maximize any potential returns or minimize any potential losses.
I want to work there.
It's awesome.
Now, today we have a brand new guest with us. Her name is Alison Brome. Hi, Alison.
Hello, Kim. Hi, Omar.
Hey.
And Alison is an HR professional, but she's also a mom, and she is a single income mortgage-free aspirant who is very purposeful about life in general and very intentional about life. Is that right?
That's true. I have always valued relationships, and I'm that person who remembers birthdays and anniversaries for family members and friends, have a knack for sourcing thoughtful gifts and making mental notes of people's favorite colors and stuff like that. Still send greeting cards by the mail and surprise gifts.
Okay.
The opposite of me.
Well, I guess I will plan to see exactly what my favorite color is before I leave here so I can make sure that Alison sends me something in my favorite color.
Lovely.
Nice. So let's talk a little bit about your journey. And when you use the term debt-free, is there a specific debt that you're seeking to gain independence from?
There is, and it is an overall mantra that I carry. So at the moment, I have a mortgage. And when I took a look at the amortization schedule that it offered, I noticed that I'd have to pay for my home 2 times over, possibly. Mm-hmm. And when I saw that, and the mortgage would be ending when I'm 60 years old, I figured it was something I needed to get rid of as quickly as possible.
Now, what even prompted you to look at the amortization schedule? Because I don't normally, normally run into somebody at the supermarket and they said, well, I was just looking at my amortization schedule.
Yeah.
See, I can't even get it said properly. That's not something that people normally will discuss or say that they're looking at. So what prompts you to even look at that?
I think it was 2 of my friends who had mortgages currently, who said to me, are you prepaying or do you plan to prepay on your mortgage? And I thought to myself, prepay. Now, I heard the whole idea of maybe paying bi-monthly rather than monthly so that you get an extra payment in every year, but I didn't really quite know what impact that would have. So then I Googled, they mentioned you can go get an amortization schedule online for free. I did that, plugged in the figures and realized, okay, with an additional 2 payments a year, I could shave off at least 5 years off my mortgage.
Wow.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And that can mean a lot of money because in the beginning, when you have a mortgage, you're paying back a little bit of principal and a lot of interest. And the more principal you pay back in the beginning, the less interest you have to end up paying over time. So that is absolutely fantastic.
Very true.
And okay, so you talked about your mortgage, but you want to live debt-free. So what else are you trying to pursue in terms of living a debt-free life?
Well, at the moment, I set goals for myself. Mm-hmm. So I do them annually, I do them monthly. And I track my expenses everything that I spend. So I take a look every month and do a review. I try to prioritize my needs, and well, there are not a whole lot of wants in there. And when things pop up that I don't expect, I try not to stress too much about it. And if it is that I do go off budget sometimes, I try my best to just forgive myself, regroup, and move on.
Okay, I have a question here. You said, you really don't check too much for your wants, you understand your needs and whatnot. But in this society that we live in, where we are consumer driven, we are managed by the moment, we are driven by our id. What training, what discipline have you put in place to say, well, this is a want, I don't really need it, and this is a need, so this has to have priority in my life?
I would say that I have let go of FOMO, the fear of missing out. I no longer feel as though I need to be in everything, or everything that everyone has is for me. I focus on the goals that I have. It's not something that I intended to be doing in terms of having a mortgage on my own, but we'll get to that. And certainly it's something that causes a readjustment in how you think about life and what you think you want for yourself.
We came to know you, Alison, or came to know of you from Instagram, where you're there as Mummy is Debt Free. So what took you to a point where you decided, I'm going to charter this path and I'm going to do it publicly on Instagram?
I have always liked to write, and I had a former workmate say to me, why don't you blog? Why don't you do something? You always have interesting experiences. And in that moment, I think it was January of 2019, I thought to myself, okay, well, I could try to figure out WordPress and do a blog. But then Instagram just came as the most natural place where you could type a few lines, impact a few people, and have a graphic to go along with it. And I do like taking photos, so that worked well.
Well, there you go. You marry your skills. Do you take photos all the time, or this is just for Instagram?
I am personally a sunset chaser. So on evenings from work, I literally drive along the coast, along the West Coast. I will stop the car if I see a nice sunset, ditch my shoes, take a video, snap a pic. And I usually tend to share those with my friends who are living overseas. And that's not their current reality. And I actually entitle it For Winner.
So they hate you.
They do. And love me all the same.
Yeah, hashtag I live where you vacation.
Yes.
So what's been the response on Instagram to this whole journey of yours?
The support has been very positive. Some of my followers are local, some are overseas based, and most of them I've never actually met. They freely share information and tips though. And I actually want to personally thank the team at Fortress Fund Managers for sending me my personalized 2020 calendar, desk calendar.
Nice.
Yes, because it keeps me organized. It keeps me great into this year 2020 as well as 2019.
Awesome.
But one thing we're really impressed with is your transparency and consistency. Is this something you really had to convince yourself to be open with?
Not really. I've always had an open nature with the good and the not so good. And I think that everybody's life has highlights and lowlights. And so people will relate to when you have great achievements and when you have your failures as well. So that has never been an issue for me to share. And I like writing, so writing online came naturally to me.
And that's quite unusual too, because a lot of people tend to use Instagram especially as just a highlight reel. So you get to see, nobody knows that they've taken, I'm not pointing at myself or anything, taken like 300 photos to get the perfect selfie.
True.
Or that they only take the pictures of the night that they went out and had a fabulous time, not knowing that they spent the last 3 weeks at home miserable or whatever the case may be. But you get to see these highlight reels and you think, oh my gosh, they're living such a fun life. They're doing all these amazing things. But you're willing to be open and share like you said, the low points and the high points, which is fantastic. On our Fortress's social media, and I think that's how we saw that you'd use the calendar in the past to help organize your life. If anybody follows Mummy is Debt Free, if you look through from time to time, she'll have like events to do with her daughter or her family and things that are coming up. And she uses her calendar to mark when those things are happening so that she knows and so she can plan and budget for them accordingly. That's right, yeah?
That's correct.
So on our social media, we recently shared a statistic from Rain Check, which is a company in the UK, about the fact that 2/3 of women in the UK say they are the main financial decision maker in their family. And that was we featured the head of Rain Check on Make It Rain, which was episode 16. So we discussed with her how similar that arrangement is within Caribbean homes, where women are oftentimes the primary financial decision maker. As a single income earner yourself, we imagine that you are the primary financial decision maker in your household. Has that always been the case?
Yes, I am the financial decision maker in my household, but no, it wasn't always that way. I used to be married, and decisions then were joint in nature. So we discuss a matter at hand and discuss how we were going to move forward. And that continues somewhat now with our daughter as it relates to any costs associated with her extracurricular activities and so on. But as it relates to my household deliberations monthly, that now happens with spreadsheets and apps.
I have a question. You want to be debt free, and I think that's a fantastic goal. So what are you doing? What would you tell our listeners that if they want to become debt free ahead of time, what would you recommend that they do? But besides invest in Fortress in a mutual fund and, over time use some of the gains to, that's my plug that I normally do every episode. Yes. So what do you recommend?
My top 3 tips is that I would suggest knowing your numbers. So knowing what you actually spend money on, how much do you owe? Who do you owe? So in a nutshell, track your expenses and itemize those debts if you have them. I'd suggest limiting the use of high interest credit tools. Never pay the minimum payment on anything. Set goals for yourself, and that's the third one, and develop small steps to reach those goals, because you can make those goals annually, as I mentioned before, quarterly or monthly, but when you set them, then you can kind of create little action points to get there.
I was listening to you thinking, were you always this financially aware? Because it's one thing to decide to look at an amortization schedule and figure out what it is that you need to do to help reduce your payments and to not end up paying until you're 60. But it's another thing to be aware of things like tracking your numbers and not using high interest debt tools. So credit tools. So what is it that how did you get to this point is what I essentially want to know.
I think it related to my childhood home, and money was openly discussed there. It was never covered or kept secret. I'd say here that my mother is a saver. My dad can be a bit of a spendthrift. And I will say that while my dad was in the private sector while I was growing up, or self-employed for most of his working life, my mother was a public sector or is a public sector employee. And I can remember being aware of the early 90s when I was a preteen, early teen, when there was the 8% wages cut for government employees. And that meant that it adjusted my thinking about what are my needs, how can I balance my wants, because I could see the impact that it was having on our household.
Yep, I remember those days all too well. I remember the shift at home. I also remember the shift at school, because I remember for things like food and nutrition, the types of things that the school previously provided, you started to have to bring in. You could prepare all the fancy cheesecake in the world that you wanted, but those are not the ingredients that they were going to regularly stock. So that's fine. So it helped you to adjust your thinking, and it's important to recognize that children can learn from those circumstances.
Yes.
So what are the life lessons that you're teaching your daughter? Because from what I can see, you are very disciplined. There are some persons who have your FOMO approach. What's it mean again?
Fear of missing out.
Fear of missing out. Some persons have enjoyed themselves beforehand and they no longer need to fear missing out. And some people just never really cared about missing out. What are you going to tell your daughter, depending on how she grows up, about, the discipline that she needs to have, especially in a society where women are becoming infinitely more dominant as the financial caretakers of the household?
Well, that's a lot. But what I'll say is that currently, as we have conversations, I noticed that she is very aware about money and its availability within our household already. And what that means is she'd come and ask, "Mommy, can we buy this particular toy if we have the money? Can we go to a particular place if we can afford it?" And sometimes I feel like that's a little bit too heavy for her, because she's just 6 and, I want her to dream big, wonderful things. But it says to me that it's allowing her to see that you can do wonderful things, but it comes sometimes with sacrifice and usually with careful planning. So for me, it is about providing the atmosphere for her to be free to dream, but know that there's work that sometimes you need to put in to get there.
Has she demonstrated to you that she's caught that lesson that, yes, there's things that we can only do when we can afford it, but has she demonstrated, Mommy, I've saved up my 20 cents and now we can go on this trip?
Yes, currently there's $7.25 in her purse because she has kept a $5 bill from December 31st when we went shopping. And she also asked for $2.25 to buy a donut, but the donut person didn't come to the school, and so she has that $7.25 waiting until such time.
And what is the $7.25 going for? I would love to know what 6-year-old is planning for $7.25.
Well, donuts. She likes Kool-Aids, and sometimes the school sells pizza for fundraising activities. So I guess she's waiting out for those treats.
Okay.
I would recommend that she find herself in Colmorock and go to Fortress. And,
Well, she would have to bring her mother
Of course,
along
of course,
since she's
of course.
under 18 and
Absolutely.
cannot open a mutual fund herself.
No problem. And
But
because she's young, she can have the capital growth account, which is for younger persons who can take a bit more risk. Listening, everyone? I'm sorry, Kim.
Yes, no, nothing to be sorry about at all. On our last episode, which was House Hunters, we talked quite a bit about property as an investment tool, and we delved into how to secure a mortgage and so on. So your previous mortgage was secured when you were married, and from following your post, we know that switching to a more manageable rate as a now single income person household posed a challenge. Can you walk us through the process and explain the outcome? You touched on it a little earlier, but can you just take us through, from the first time that the seed was planted, that there was a way that this could be adjusted? What did you have to do to get it adjusted?
Well, the reality is joint income was more than single income. And so that meant that my negotiating position was weakened somewhat. So in terms of finding that new rate or getting a rate that I was satisfied with, I actually do feel like I jumped through quite a few hoops to get there. And what that meant was many emails, many calls to my relationship manager. It meant being placed on hold for over 2 months before I got a response, and I still wasn't satisfied with the rate. So I decided to, stick a pin. Not satisfied there. But I remember I was driving to work one morning and I heard a radio ad, and they were offering very attractive rates, great prepayment options. And the prepayment, meaning paying ahead on your mortgage, is very important to me, as I mentioned before. So I thought, let me provide the documents, and I did that. And I got an initial approval. And while that process took a few months, I would say about 8.
Wow.
I'm very happy with my rate now. I'm happy with my prepayment options. And so I'd encourage anyone, just because something's handed to you, you don't always, and you're not satisfied with it, you don't need to stay where you are. You can seek out options, you can do some reading, you can make some calls, and try to do better for yourself.
And like a friend of mine likes to say, you're not a tree, you can get up and move.
Yes.
Why did it take so long? Do you have any idea why it took so long? Because I can't imagine if you took in all the documentation, why did it take as long as 8 months? Or is that just the total process of you trying to negotiate with your initial provider and then finding somebody else to consider your options?
Yes, it was the total process. So it meant, and it comes down to response time too. And I can only imagine that when you don't have a large portfolio with a financial institution, sometimes you don't always get all the attention that you could possibly get if you had more accounts or more credit with them. So I just had the mortgage. I had a small income. As I said, it was reduced from joint to sole. And so I could only imagine that I didn't have a huge portfolio or a large amount of negotiating power. And that, I imagine, is what led to it taking a while.
Yeah, how did you even keep hopeful through that entire process? Because I know of people who, they have come to the similar situation either through the loss of a spouse, through death, or through divorce, and they kind of just throw up their hands in the air. I can't, my life can't continue. I don't know what I'm going to do. This can't work. Obviously it's an attitudinal thing, but again, there must have been something that helped to inspire you to even pursue this as an option.
Because I didn't want to be 60 and paying for 2 houses and only have one. And so knowing my numbers, it helped me to realize that I could make changes, I could make adjustments, and I could seek better for myself.
That's awesome. That's awesome. As Mummy is Debt Free, you offer a lot of experience as education for your Instagram followers. How are you broadening or continue to broaden your own financial education? Because you seem like you've got quite a bit of education on your own, but what else have you been doing? Or is there anything else that you've been doing to broaden your financial education?
In addition to the radio to and from work, I listen to podcasts like this one. And I spend more time reading business news and articles. And I keep track of the performance of the fund that my pension is in. I make it a point to read my employer's quarterly and annual reports to keep up with those to see what's happening. And I actually found a local children's book about teaching children how to manage money, about giving, and about budgeting and earning. It's called The Children's Book of Money Sense. And I found that with the rewards charts in there and so on, that has helped me to learn as well with my daughter as I go along the journey.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Just shameless plug, my sister is an advocate of reward charts that she uses for herself. So reward charts are not only good for kids. She rewards herself for things like going to the gym consistently and all those things that I feel to do.
I can see that I can take that on board.
So suppose I want to go and get a mortgage tomorrow, despite me having to probably wait 8 months. What was the key thing you would tell me about going to get a mortgage and wanting to repay it as quickly as possible?
I would say find out as much information that you can. Is the rate of interest that's being offered variable or fixed? If it's
What's the
fixed,
difference?
Variable means that you have a particular rate and that can be varied by the financial institution at any point in time throughout the life of your mortgage.
Okay.
Fixed tends to be, it's a fixed rate, meaning that interest is added daily usually at that set rate over a set period of time, be it 3 years, be it 5 years.
Oh, I understand.
So it would be important to check whether or not that rate that you're hearing, and it may be very low, but is it only fixed for 1 year and then variable thereafter? So it would be important to know that. I'd say to persons, save as much money as you can. There are going to be some unexpected things like indemnity insurance that will come your way. There will be things like negotiation fees that will come your way that you don't quite expect. And so I'd say save money and try your best to cushion some of the borrowing that you may have to do down the line to facilitate the mortgage.
So instead of going for 100% or 95% mortgage, you may try for a 90% or something like that.
Correct.
And that helps you save money in the long run.
It does.
Okay.
Those are all good tips in terms of mortgages and, planning for mortgages. And that's helpful. We kind of touched a little bit on that in our last episode. And I know that there's so much more to explore. We couldn't possibly cover it here. But I thank you for sharing what you do know with us. And it's been a lot for somebody, I'm sure, who's been listening, who didn't know anything about fixed rates or flexible rates or any of the other things that you mentioned. So I really appreciate that, Alison. The other thing I would want to remind people is that a mutual fund can be an important part of moving towards this process. Alison talked about saving as much as you can. And some of you may not have a particular goal. Alison also talked about setting goals, and you may not have a particular goal in mind right now, but if you can save or invest your funds so that you will be ready when those opportunities arrive, that you may then set a goal at a later point, then there's nothing wrong with having the funds to do it, much like the $725 that her daughter Amanda has, waiting for when those donut people come back around. So a mutual fund is an opportunity to do that, and we welcome you down at Fortress in Column Rock, as Omar is always saying. I want to thank Amanda. Sorry, I want to thank Alison. All right, Amanda, we healed you up.
Yes, we did actually.
Thank you, Alison, for coming and speaking with us today. It was so good to finally meet you and to hear about your journey. And we wish you continued good luck as a debt-free mummy.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
All right.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Laters.
Bye.
Do It for Grantley is a production of Fortress Fund Managers. You can listen to and download all our episodes in all the good places podcasts are available, including SoundCloud, Google and Apple Podcast, TuneIn, and more. Or on our website, fortressfund.com. That's fortressfund.com, where you can also find this episode's show notes, explaining all the financial terms we mentioned in the show. Remember, let us know what you think about the podcast, this episode, or other money matters. You can email us at info@fortressfund.com or send us a message on Facebook or Instagram at Fortress Fund Managers. Most people find out about podcasts through recommendations, so spread the word and tell your friends about our show. Until next time, I'm Kim Howard.
And I'm Omar Kennedy.
Thanks for listening.